The summit of Scorn, the trading station Nexus 7 hung in neutral space like a gleaming jewel, its surface covered in docking ports that accommodated vessels from 300 different civilizations. Director Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck, watching ships arrive for the Galactic Trade Summit. Some vessels were organic, grown rather than built. Others existed as pure energy contained in magnetic bottles. A few were so massive they had to anchor at distant points, sending shuttles to the station itself. Elena adjusted her simple gray business suit, aware of how plain it looked compared to the exotic attire of other delegates. Behind her, Colonel James Reeves stood silently in his military dress uniform. He was officially her security detail, but both knew his real purpose was intelligence gathering. Earth needed to understand how these species thought, how they operated, what made them confident. The summit chamber was circular, with seating arranged in concentric rings that rose toward a central platform. Holographic displays floated throughout the space, showing real-time trade data, economic projections, and resource maps. Elena had studied this room for months, memorizing every detail, preparing for this moment. Earth's petition was simple. Humanity wanted access to galactic trade networks. They offered rare minerals, manufactured goods, and cultural exports. In return, they sought technology licenses and shipping access. Nothing aggressive, nothing unreasonable. Just a chance to participate in the prosperity that other species took for granted. The first hour went smoothly enough. Smaller civilizations presented their proposals, most of which were approved with minimal debate. Then Elena's turn came. She walked to the central platform, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. The holographic display activated at her touch, showing Earth's economic data. Honored delegates, Elena began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Humanity comes before this assembly seeking partnership. We offer resources harvested from our system, including platinum group metals, rare earth elements, and deuterium. We also offer manufactured precision components and cultural media that we believe will find markets across multiple civilizations. The presentation continued for 10 minutes. Elena highlighted Earth's strengths while acknowledging their limitations. She showed growth projections, proposed trade routes, and potential partnerships. It was professional, thorough, and carefully researched. The laughter started during her discussion of shipping capabilities. A delegate from the Kryn Consortium, a species of six-limbed beings with crystalline exoskeletons, made a sound that his translator rendered as mocking amusement. Others joined in, creating a ripple of derision that spread through the chamber. "Forgive the interruption," the Kryn delegate said, his voice carrying across the chamber through translation technology. "But this assembly must address the fundamental absurdity of this proposal. Humans offer minerals that can be found in 1,000,000 systems. They offer manufactured goods that our automated systems produce more efficiently. They offer culture from a species barely 500 years past their pre-industrial phase." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her expression neutral. "Our manufacturing processes are competitive. Our quality control standards exceed." "Competitive?" A delegate from the Thessian Empire interrupted. The Thessians were tall, elegant beings who had mastered biotechnology millennia ago. "You use assembly lines. Physical labor. Your fastest production facilities would be considered quaint museums by our standards. Why would anyone trade with Earth when superior alternatives exist everywhere?" More laughter. Elena noticed that even species she had researched as potentially sympathetic were exchanging amused glances. The Quillan Federation representative, a being of shifting light patterns, spoke next. "The humans also fail to understand basic trade economics. They offer payment in precious metals as if we exist in some primitive barter system. Most advanced civilizations abandoned physical currency centuries ago. Energy credits, computational shares, temporal banking. These are the currencies of real trade. Earth operates like children playing with shiny rocks." The Kryn delegate stood, his crystalline body catching the light. "This assembly has been patient with Earth's aspirations, but patience has limits. Humanity lacks the technology, the economic foundation, and frankly the cultural sophistication to participate in galactic commerce. They should return to their small yellow star and develop for another 1,000 years. Perhaps then they will be ready for this conversation." The Zorvath collective representative added their voice. The Zorvath were a hive-mind species speaking with unsettling unity. "We have analyzed human history. They fight among themselves constantly. Their planet is divided into competing nations. They wage wars over resources they could share. This is not a species ready for integration into civilized trade networks. They would bring their primitive conflicts into our markets. Elena gripped the podium, knuckles white. She had expected skepticism, even resistance. But this level of contempt was beyond her preparation. These species weren't just rejecting Earth's proposal, they were dismissing humanity as irrelevant, as children to be patronized and sent away. Our conflicts have taught us valuable lessons, Elena said, voice tight with controlled anger. We understand competition, negotiation under pressure, and resource management in ways that peaceful species might not appreciate. These experiences give us perspectives that could benefit trade relationships. Perspectives? The Kryn delegate's laughter was harsh. You call your wars perspectives? You call your inability to unify your own planet a strength? Humanity is a cautionary tale, not a trading partner. You are resource gatherers at best, scavengers hoping to profit from civilizations that have moved beyond your primitive understanding. The vote was called. Elena stood on the platform, watching as the display showed results in real time. 317 delegates voted. 312 voted against Earth's admission to trade networks. 5 abstained. 0 voted in favor. The rejection was absolute. Elena gathered her materials in silence, aware of the whispers spreading through the chamber. Some delegates had already moved on to other business, dismissing Earth as completely as if humanity had never existed. Others watched her departure with what might have been pity or perhaps just curiosity about how primitives handled failure. Colonel Reeves fell into step beside her as she walked through the corridors, toward their docked vessel. His expression was carefully neutral, but Elena had worked with him long enough to read the tension in his shoulders. That went well, he said quietly, his tone carrying bitter irony. They made their position clear, Elena replied. We're not just rejected. We're considered irrelevant, a joke, something to laugh about before moving on to serious matters. They reached their ship, a modest vessel that looked tiny compared to the exotic craft surrounding it. Inside, the rest of the human delegation waited. Dr. Sarah Chen, their chief economist, Captain Michael Torres, their shipping specialist, and Professor David Okoro, their cultural liaison. All of them had watched the proceedings through remote feeds. I'm sorry, Director, Dr. Chen said softly. We knew it was a long shot, but I didn't expect such open contempt. Elena sat heavily in the command chair. They don't see us as potential partners. They see us as primitives. Too violent, too disorganized, too technologically backward to matter. They're not entirely wrong, Professor Okoro observed. We are newcomers. We do fight among ourselves. Our technology is crude compared to theirs. But they missed something, Colonel Reeves said, his voice carrying an edge that made everyone look at him. Did anyone else notice the trade route maps during the early presentations? He pulled up holographic displays showing the data that had been shared throughout the summit. The Kryn Consortium is expanding aggressively. They've acquired mining rights in 14 systems over the past year. They're building new trade hubs in disputed territories. And they're doing it fast, faster than the regulatory bodies can keep up with. Elena studied the maps. You think they're preparing for something bigger? I think they're empire building, and they're using the slow bureaucracy of the Galactic Council to do it before anyone can organize opposition. Look at these territories. Most of them belong to smaller civilizations without significant military forces, species that depend on Council protection. Dr. Chen leaned forward. If the Kryn are moving into territories belonging to Council-protected species, that violates about 20 different trade agreements. Why isn't anyone stopping them? Because stopping them requires Council consensus, Professor Okoro said, which requires debate, committees, impact assessments, and diplomatic negotiations. The Kryn can seize a system in days. The Council takes months to schedule a meeting. Elena felt something shift in her thinking. The summit hadn't just been about trade. It had been about measuring Earth, about seeing if humanity posed any threat or offered any value. They had been weighed and dismissed. But in that dismissal, the galaxy had revealed something about itself. They're complacent, she said quietly. They've had peace for so long they've forgotten how quickly things can change. They think in terms of procedures and protocols because they've never had to think in terms of survival. Colonel Reeves nodded slowly. And the Kryn are exploiting that complacency. They're betting they can take what they want before the Council bureaucracy can respond. This isn't our fight, Captain Torres said. Earth was rejected. We have no obligations here. No, Elena agreed. We don't. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the laughter in that chamber, the casual dismissal of humanity's worth, the certainty in those alien voices that Earth didn't matter. Then she smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Colonel, when we get home, I want you to contact General Morrison at Strategic Command. Tell him I need an assessment of our cyber warfare capabilities. Everything we have, everything we've developed, everything we've learned from decades of digital conflict. Reeves raised an eyebrow. Director, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, the galaxy thinks we're primitive because we fight among ourselves. They think our conflicts make us weak. Elena's voice was cold now, filled with certainty. They don't understand that our conflicts made us very good at fighting. They mock our technology, but they never asked what we learned to do with the technology we have. Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. We can't go to war with the galaxy. Even if we wanted to, we'd be crushed. War? Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Doctor, humanity learned a long time ago that wars aren't just won with ships and weapons. They're won by controlling information, disrupting supply lines, and making your enemy afraid of what you might do next. The Kryn Consortium is about to learn what happens when you dismiss a species that spent its entire history fighting for survival. Their ship detached from Nexus 7, beginning the long journey back to Earth. Behind them, the summit continued, delegates laughing and trading and building their comfortable prosperity. None of them noticed the small human vessel departing. None of them thought about Earth again. That was their first mistake. Their second was assuming that humanity would accept rejection quietly. And their third, the fatal one, was believing that primitive meant harmless. In the months that followed, Earth's government received Elena's report with mixed reactions. Some wanted to focus inward, to develop in isolation until humanity could compete on galactic terms. Others saw opportunity in the chaos that Colonel Reeves had identified. The decision was made at the highest levels, in rooms where Earth's survival had been debated for generations. If the galaxy wouldn't accept humanity as partners, then humanity would demonstrate why dismissing them had been unwise, not through invasion, not through traditional warfare, but through methods that advanced civilizations had forgotten existed. The Kryn Consortium continued their expansion, unaware that their empire was about to become humanity's classroom, a demonstration of what primitives could accomplish when they stopped trying to play by civilized rules and started playing to win. The darkness descends. 3 months after the summit, the Kryn Consortium announced their most ambitious expansion yet. In a broadcast transmitted across galactic networks, their High Administrator declared the annexation of the Valix Cluster, a region containing 12 inhabited worlds belonging to smaller civilizations. The announcement was carefully worded, speaking of economic integration and mutual prosperity, but the underlying message was clear. The Kryn were taking what they wanted, and they expected no resistance. The Galactic Council responded exactly as Colonel Reeves had predicted. An emergency session was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Committees were formed to study the legal implications. Diplomatic envoys were dispatched to gather testimony from affected species. The machinery of galactic bureaucracy ground slowly forward while Kryn warships moved into position around the Velix worlds. On Earth, in a secure facility beneath the Arctic ice, Director Elena Vasquez watched the Kryn broadcasts with cold satisfaction. Around her, the most brilliant minds humanity had ever produced were gathered in what was officially called the Digital Warfare Research Center. Unofficially, it was known as the Dark Room, and what happened here would never appear in any public record. They've established standard occupation protocols, reported Commander Lisa Park, formerly of Earth's Cyber Command. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, displaying data streams from across Kryn space. Communication networks follow predictable patterns. Power grids use centralized management systems. Their entire infrastructure is networked with minimal redundancy because they've never faced a serious cyber threat. Dr. Raymond Chen, who had spent 20 years developing offensive digital weapons for various Earth governments, shook his head in disbelief. It's like they've never heard of network security. Everything is connected. Everything talks to everything else, and their encryption is academic, elegant, sophisticated, but designed to prevent casual intrusion, not determined attack. They evolved in peaceful times, Elena said. They built their systems for efficiency, not security. Why would they need protection when the galaxy has been at peace for centuries? General Sarah Morrison, the architect of Earth's cyber warfare doctrine, studied the displays with professional interest. This is what we trained for. Every hacker collective, every digital conflict, every corporate espionage case taught us something. We learned to fight in networks because we had no choice. Our entire civilization runs on systems that millions of people try to break every single day. Elena turned to face the assembled team. 37 people, carefully selected from across Earth's intelligence agencies, military cyber units, and even reformed hacker communities. Each one had been chosen for their skills and their willingness to operate in the shadows where humanity's survival might depend on actions the public would never know about. The Kryn think we're primitive, Elena said quietly. They laughed at our technology, at our conflicts, at our inability to unify peacefully. They don't understand that our conflicts made us dangerous in ways they can't imagine. Today we begin teaching them that lesson. The operation had been planned with meticulous care. Phase 1 involved inserting backdoors into Kryn networks through seemingly innocent trade communications. Over the past 3 months, Earth had sent hundreds of technical inquiries, research requests, and diplomatic messages to various Kryn facilities. Each message had been carefully crafted to contain hidden code fragments that exploited vulnerabilities in Kryn translation software. The Kryn had processed these messages through their automated systems, never suspecting that each translation created small openings in their network security. Individually, these openings were useless. Together, they formed a web of access points spreading throughout Kryn space. All insertion points are active, Commander Park reported. We have access to communication hubs on 47 Kryn worlds, including their 3 core systems. Power grid management systems? General Morrison asked. Compromised on 32 worlds. Their grid control uses centralized AI management, which makes it efficient but vulnerable. Once we're in the primary system, we control everything. Dr. Chen pulled up schematics showing Kryn infrastructure. Their entire civilization runs on assumption of stability. They've optimized everything for performance, removing redundancy and backup systems they considered wasteful. One major hub controls regional communications for dozens of systems. Disable that hub and entire sectors go dark. Elena studied the maps, seeing patterns that the Kryn had never considered vulnerabilities. They built their empire on efficiency, trusting that nothing would ever seriously threaten their infrastructure. That trust is about to become their weakness. Director, General Morrison said carefully, once we begin this operation, there's no going back. The galaxy will know Earth is responsible. We'll be confirming everything they accused us of being. They already decided what we are, Elena replied. Primitive, violent, unsuitable for civilized company. Let's show them they were half right. We are what our history made us, and our history made us survivors. The command was given. Across Kryn space, dormant code fragments activated simultaneously. The operation began not with explosions or visible attacks, but with subtle changes in network traffic patterns that Kryn technicians wouldn't notice for hours. The first target was the Velix cluster, where Kryn occupation forces had established control. Communications between Occupation Command and the Kryn homeworld began experiencing inexplicable delays. Messages arrived corrupted or incomplete. Real-time tactical coordination became impossible as latency increased from milliseconds to minutes, then hours. Kryn technicians scrambled to diagnose the problem, running standard network analysis tools that found nothing wrong. The issue wasn't with individual components or connections. It was with the fundamental routing protocols that governed how information flowed through their networks. Protocols that Earth's code had quietly rewritten. Within 6 hours, the Velix cluster was effectively isolated. Messages could be sent, but they disappeared into digital void. The occupation forces could see their homeworld on sensors, could track ships moving through space, but couldn't communicate with anyone beyond their immediate vicinity. The Kryn High Administrator received the first reports with irritation rather than alarm. Network problems happened occasionally, even in advanced civilizations. Technicians would identify the fault and restore service. It was inconvenient but hardly catastrophic. Then the power failures began. On a mining world that supplied resources to the Kryn industrial core, the central power management system began receiving conflicting data about grid load. The AI controlling distribution, couldn't reconcile the information and defaulted to safety protocols, reducing output to prevent overloads that weren't actually occurring. Within hours, the planet's industrial facilities went dark. Mining operations halted, refineries shut down, transport systems stopped functioning. The population wasn't in danger, but the economy of an entire world ground to a complete stop. Kryn engineers deployed to investigate found something impossible. The power grid was functioning perfectly. Every component worked exactly as designed, but the management system was convinced that catastrophic failures were imminent and refused to restore full power, regardless of what technicians told it. They tried manual overrides. The system accepted the commands, then immediately reverted to safety mode. They tried replacing the management AI entirely. The new system inherited the same phantom data from network nodes it trusted implicitly. The problem wasn't in any single component. It was everywhere and nowhere, woven into the fabric of their infrastructure so thoroughly that removing it would require rebuilding everything from scratch. By the end of the first week, 9 Kryn worlds had experienced similar failures. Each incident was slightly different. Communication networks collapsed on some worlds. Power grids failed on others. On 3 planets, automated traffic control systems began giving ships conflicting instructions, making orbital traffic so dangerous that all spaceflight was suspended. The Kryn High Administrator finally understood they were under attack, but couldn't identify the attacker. There were no ships, no weapons, no visible enemy to fight. Their worlds were being systematically crippled by invisible hands that struck from within their own networks. Emergency sessions of Kryn leadership devolved into chaos as different factions blamed each other for inadequate security. Military commanders demanded offensive action, but against what target? Earth had maintained complete silence, conducting normal diplomatic business, giving no indication they were involved. 2 weeks into the crisis, 16 Kryn worlds were dark. Not destroyed, not conquered, but isolated and paralyzed. Billions of Kryn citizens went about their daily lives, but without connection to the wider empire. Trade stopped. Information flow ceased. The mighty Kryn consortium was fragmenting into isolated pockets. Then Elena transmitted her message. It appeared simultaneously on every operational Kryn network, bypassing all security protocols. Her face filled screens across Kryn space, her expression calm and almost pleasant. This is Director Elena Vasquez of Earth. I address the Kryn Consortium and the Galactic Council. 3 months ago, humanity sought peaceful participation in galactic trade. We were rejected with contempt. We were called primitive, violent, unsuitable for civilized society. You were correct about one thing. Humanity is shaped by violence, by centuries of digital warfare, by conflicts fought in networks and code rather than with ships and weapons. The display behind her showed a map of Kryn space, with affected worlds highlighted in red. The Kryn Consortium currently has 17 worlds experiencing catastrophic infrastructure failures. These failures will continue and spread until the following conditions are met. 1. Immediate withdrawal from all territories seized in the Valix cluster. 2. Dissolution of all Kryn military forces beyond system defense requirements. 3. Submission to independent monitoring of Kryn expansion activities. 4. Reparations to all species harmed by Kryn aggression. Elena paused, letting her words sink in. You have 72 hours to comply. For every hour beyond that deadline, another Kryn world goes dark. You wanted to know what primitive humans could do? This is your answer. We fight in spaces you forgot existed, using methods your peaceful civilization never developed. Your networks are ours now. Your infrastructure exists at our discretion. Your empire survives only because we permit it. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity watched in horror as they realized what had happened. Earth hadn't attacked with warships or weapons. They had reached into the digital foundation of Kryn civilization and torn it apart from within. The Galactic Council convened in genuine emergency session this time, but found themselves paralyzed by the implications. If they condemned Earth's actions, they risked becoming the next target. If they supported the Kryn, they were defending aggressive expansionism. If they did nothing, they admitted their irrelevance. The Quillan Federation delegates spoke for many when they said, "We mocked their conflicts, their violence, their primitive technology. We never asked what those conflicts taught them. Humanity learned to fight wars in dimensions we don't understand, using weapons we can't defend against, the Thessian Empire representative added. They turned the Kryn's own infrastructure into a prison. No deaths, no destruction, just systematic isolation. This is psychological warfare on a civilizational scale. In the Kryn capital, the High Administrator faced an impossible choice. Their military was powerful but useless against this enemy. Their technology was advanced but compromised at every level. Their empire was collapsing not through conquest but through internal paralysis. 48 hours after Elena's transmission, the Kryn Consortium announced complete withdrawal from the Velix cluster. They dismantled their offensive military fleets, keeping only defensive forces. They agreed to monitoring and reparations. They had no choice. Earth restored Kryn networks gradually, proving they could grant mercy as easily as inflict punishment. Within a week, the Dark Worlds came back online, but the Kryn would never forget the feeling of helplessness, of watching their empire crumble while being unable to defend against an enemy they couldn't even see. 1 month later, Helena Vasquez stood once again before the Galactic Council. This time, there was no laughter, no contempt, only fear barely concealed behind diplomatic courtesy. The Council recognizes Director Vasquez of Earth. The Arbiter announced, his voice carefully neutral. We have reviewed your petition for trade network access. The vote will now proceed. The results appeared quickly. 294 in favor, 23 abstaining, 0 against. Earth was granted full access to galactic trade networks with all associated privileges. But Elena knew the truth. They weren't being accepted as partners. They were being accommodated as threats. The galaxy had learned that humanity was dangerous in ways they couldn't defend against. That primitive meant something very different than harmless. As she departed the council chamber, Elena felt no triumph, only the cold satisfaction of a lesson delivered. Earth had earned its place not through friendship but through fear. The galaxy would trade with humanity now, but they would never trust them, and perhaps that was enough. Respect and fear were more reliable than friendship anyway. Humanity had proven they could survive in a universe that dismissed them. They had shown that weapons came in many forms and the most dangerous ones were invisible. The sky had gone dark over Kryn worlds, one planet at a time. It was a demonstration the galaxy would never forget, and a warning that primitive species might be the most dangerous of all, because they remembered how to fight when survival demanded it.